For our first bit of review, I'm going to start with logic. And logic has to deal with conditional, inverse, converse, and contrapositive. Here are some symbols that you need to remember: not, and, or, if, then, or using the word implies, if and only if, so remember that that is your biconditional. Now I'll write that in there. Ooh, there we go. Okay. And then we have this little 3-dot thing, and that just means therefore. So don't let that thing intimidate you. Oh, there's a biconditional up there. Well, that was ridiculous. All right, so law of syllogism, meaning usually we use P and Q because it pertains to this logic. So if you want, you can make this P implies Q, Q implies R, then P implies R. And then same with the law of detachment. P implies Q, and then your second statement should be P, and your third should match Q. And then our last thing is if you have an if-then statement and it will always have the same truth value as its contrapositive, and they call those logically equivalent. So conditional and contrapositive. So the two ends kind of meeting together and meaning the exact same thing, only saying it a little bit backwards or negating it, that kind of information. So starting with this first one, what's the converse of the sentence? If Sam leaves, then I will stay. Well, since this is your if, that means Sam leaves is your P. Here's usually then, so I will stay is your Q. So what we are looking for, converse, is Q implies P. We want to switch it. And so if we switch the order, it would become if, and I'm going to go ahead and use the highlighter here. It would become if, that's not the highlighter. Hang on. Sorry. Oh my gosh. Goodness. There we go. If I will stay, then Sam leaves. And now the wording on that sounds really weird, right? So we're going to fix that wording. So instead of if I will stay, if I stay. So there it is there. B does not start with the correct first statement. C does not start with the correct first statement because it's Sam leaves, which is not correct. And then D is if I do not stay, and we don't use a not, and so A is our answer. So remember in class that I said that you want to not only make sure you have your answer, but you want to know why the other ones are wrong. And so being able to go through each one individually and say, okay, this is definitely not right and here's why, will make you feel more confident as you're working your way through the SOL in the end of this month. Okay, if you're looking at your answers, if Sam does not leave, then I will not stay. This would be your inverse because all it did was negate both things. If Sam leaves, then I will not stay. This isn't anything. This is nothing. That's not even any piece of the statement at all. And then D would be if I do not stay, then Sam will not leave. It does both, and so this would be your contrapositive. All right, so your second one. According to this Venn diagram, which one of these things is true? Well, some football players play offense and defense. This and piece means it's this right in here. And so, based on that statement, I'm feeling like it's probably F, so we're going to go to G. All football players play defense. Well, that's not necessarily true because there are football players that play offense, right? So it's not G. H, no football players play offense and defense. Well, if there was none, there would be no overlap. And you'll notice in the Venn diagram, there is an overlap between those two, so it can't be H. And then all football players play offense or defense. Well, the way this is set up, you'll actually notice that there's this area out here, and that includes football players that are not on offense or defense, and so J can't work either. And that would leave you with F as your answer. All right, now number 3. A represents X as an even number, and B is X is a multiple of 4. So when X is 10, which of the following is true? A and B. So what this statement is really saying is 10 is an even number. This is an and a multiple of 4. All right, well, if you're looking at the number 10, 10 is even, that's true, and I'm going to actually do that in a different color. We get true here, and Multiple of 4, false. Well, for an and statement, so remember for this, both must be true. So it's not A. All right, now B. 10 is an even number and is not a multiple of 4, because remember this thing means not. Well, is 10 an even number? Yes, it is. And is it not a multiple of 4? It is not a multiple of 4, so that is a true statement. So we have a true and a true, so we're leaning towards B right now. Now I'm going to go into this one. 10 is not even and is a multiple of 4. Well, you're looking at that statement. 10 is not even is a false statement, and then is a multiple of 4. That's also false, so it's not C because you have two falses, and you have to have both trues. And so we look at not A, which we already wrote right here. It's a false, and we wrote not B right up here, and that's a true, which again, it's an and. Both of them must be true, so it's not D. We are in fact good with answer C. If you have an or statement, only one has to be true. So just a reminder on how those two things work. Okay, number 4, which statement is the inverse? If the waves are small, I do not go surfing. So the waves are small would be your P, and do not go surfing is your Q. Now, sometimes the inverse means to put the word not in, and sometimes it means to take it out. So we want the waves are small to stay in its place because inverse does not P implies not Q. So we want this to stay exactly where it is. So you'll notice that B does not start with waves, so B is out because this part is not matching the waves. C, same thing, it starts with surfing. We don't want that. Now we're looking at the difference between A and D. If the waves are not small, so they threw the word not in here, which is good. But then it says, I do not go surfing. Well, you notice that that is actually identical to what's already there, but some people would pick this answer because of the word not. So you have to be careful and read that original sentence. So A is not the answer. And then if you look at D, if the waves are not small, I go surfing. It's the exact opposite of what you see up here in the original statement. All right, number 5, if negotiations fail, the baseball strike will not end. If the baseball strike does not end, the World Series will not be played. And we're looking for a valid conclusion to this argument. So if negotiations fail, so here's our P statement. And then the baseball strike will not end would be our Q statement. So if you look at your second statement, the baseball strike does not end. Well, that's the same thing, it's just a little bit different wording, but it's saying that the strike isn't going to end. So that's Q again. And then we have the World Series will not be played, which would be R. So what we've got is P implies Q, and then we have Q implies R, which is the law of syllogism. Okay, so what that means then is our third statement, we need to use P again and implies R. So we're looking for negotiations fail, the World Series will not be played. So if negotiations fail, F does not start with that statement, so it's not that one. If negotiations do not fail, it is not that one. If negotiations fail, we're good with H so far, and if negotiations fail, we're good with J. So now we have to look at the second half. The World Series will not be played, and this one says the World Series will. Well, if it was, you would be taking the not out, which the law of syllogism does not do, so your answer is H. All right, number 6, according to the Venn diagram, which statement is true? No trapezoids are isosceles trapezoids. Well, first of all, that's not even a logical statement. How could it not be an isosceles trapezoid if it doesn't even make sense. But regardless, if it was no, there would be no overlapping, so it's not A. B, some trapezoids are isosceles trapezoids. Well, yeah, because all of these, there are trapezoids out here in this section that do not fall in this area, so we're leaning towards B. C, all trapezoids are isosceles trapezoids. Well, if it was all, you would have isosceles trapezoids out here and then just trapezoids in here. Then we have some isosceles trapezoids or parallelograms. Where is this even coming from? Like, it's not even part of this at all. Like, what in the world? So we are going with B. All right, and then number 7, which statement is logically equivalent to, if it is warm, then I go swimming? And remember from that beginning, it's on that side of the paper, it says the logically equivalent would be your conditional and contrapositive. So conditional and contrapositive. Conditional being P implies Q. Contrapositive is not Q, implies not P. So switch and negate. If it is warm, so it is warm needs to come second, and then I go swimming needs to come first, and it needs to say not. So if I go swimming, that is exactly Q. So this is actually Q implies P, which is not the contrapositive. Second one, if it is warm, then I do not go swimming. This is P implies not Q, which is still not the contrapositive. H, if I do not go swimming, then it is not warm. So do not go swimming. Oops, not, sorry. Swimming, then it is not warm. So far, that's looking like the answer, right? And if it is not warm, that's not P, then I do not go swimming. That implies not Q. Well, this is the one we're looking for, so H is our answer, and getting rid of J.